Around the World, written by Rachel Blackburn, published by the Wright Group, a division of the McGraw-Hill Companies. Contents: The Around the World Race, page 2. The Around the World Yacht Race, page 4. Solo Sailors, page 12. Ballooning, page 20. Single-engine planes, page 28. Glossary, page 32. The Around the World Race. For many years, people have tried to travel around the world, racing to be the first or the fastest person. They have used many different types of transport, including boats and balloons. All of these types of transport can be dangerous. The Around the World Yacht Race. One of the best-known around-the-world races is the Around the World Yacht Race. Yacht crews sail as fast as they can for 9 months. They cover many nautical miles over water. They have to put up with hot temperatures, high seas, and icebergs. The first around-the-world yacht race was held in 1973 and 74. It has been held every 4 years since then. The race starts and finishes in Southampton, England. There are 9 different legs, or sections, of the race. After they finish each leg, the yacht crews are given time to rest, fix their boats, and buy food. A diagram of the legs of the Around the World Yacht Race. These are the legs that make up the Around the World Yacht Race. Leg 1, Southampton, England to Cape Town, South Africa. Leg 2, Cape Town to Fremantle, Australia. Leg 3, Fremantle to Sydney, Australia. Leg 4, Sydney to Auckland, New Zealand. Leg 5, Auckland to São Sebastião, Brazil. Leg 6, São Sebastião to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, United States. Leg 7, Fort Lauderdale, Florida to Annapolis, Baltimore, Maryland, United States. Leg 8, Annapolis, Baltimore, Maryland to La Rochelle, France. Leg 9, La Rochelle to Southampton, England. Not all the legs are the same length. Each leg is measured in nautical miles. 1 nautical mile is about 2,025 yards, or 1,852 meters. The longest leg is the first leg from Southampton to Cape Town, which is over 7,350 nautical miles. The shortest leg is the last leg, which is 450 nautical miles, from La Rochelle to Southampton. There is no set course for each leg, except the start and finish place. Sailors sail their boats as fast as they can, using the wind and the tides. The exact distance of the race depends on which course each yacht takes. The shortest possible distance is 31,600 nautical miles. In the 1998-1999 Around the World Yacht Race, the fastest boat took 117 days to complete the race. The last boat to finish took 142 days. The Sailors. Many of the sailors who sail in the Around the World Yacht Race are professionals. These sailors are paid to sail in the race. It is their job. Some of the world's top sailors have raced in the Around the World Yacht Race. The yachts must sail with a crew of at least 6 and at most 12 people. Most yachts carry crews of between 10 and 12 people. The boats. In recent races, many countries have entered boats in the Around the World Yacht Race. In early Around the World Yacht Races, The race was made up of different types of boats. Each type of boat was given different points based on the boat type. Some boats were faster, some boats were slower. It became very hard for race officials to work out the results. Now everybody must sail in the same type of boat, the Whitbread 60. The Whitbread 60 can sail at speeds of over 20 knots for long periods of time. A diagram of the countries entering the around-the-world yacht race. Hazards of long-distance sailing. The around-the-world yacht race can be dangerous, with many hazards. In the first race, 3 men died at sea. Another crew member was lost in the next race, 4 years later. In total, 4 men have lost their lives during 6 around-the-world yacht races. None of the boats sailing in this race have sunk, but many have come close. High seas have damaged the hulls of boats. Floating objects and whales have put holes in boats. Keels have been lost, and boats have been flipped over. Masts have been snapped in half. So far, all the damaged boats have been able to get to the nearest port or have been towed to safety. A chart of hazards. Solo sailors. The sailors in the around-the-world yacht race face many hazards. Solo sailors face even more hazards. Nevertheless, many people have sailed or tried to sail around the world by themselves. Sir Francis Chichester, who lived from 1901 to 1972, was an English adventurer who made long-distance trips both by boat and airplane. In August 1966, he sailed alone from England to Australia in his 53-foot or 16-meter yacht, the Gypsy Moth 4. He returned to England in May 1967, passing through the dangerous seas around Cape Horn. Chichester's other long-distance journeys included one of the first solo flights from England to Australia in 1929. He made the first east-west flight across the Tasman Sea between New Zealand and Australia in 1931. He won the first solo sailing race across the Atlantic in 1960. Lisa Clayton was the first woman to sail solo around the world. She set sail in her yacht from Dartmouth, England in September 1994, finishing the trip 285 days later. In 1971, Che Blythe sailed solo around the world from east to west against the winds. The trip took 302 days. 2 years later, Alan Colas sailed solo around the world, taking only 129 days to finish the trip. The race. In 1982, a Frenchman named Philippe Jantot, who was an expert sailor, had the idea of a solo non-stop race around the world. This race is now held once every 4 years. It is called Around Alone. There are always 4 legs to the race, and they always start and finish in the same place. The Around Alone course is 27,000 miles, or 43,451 kilometers. Leg 1. Charleston, South Carolina to Cape Town, South Africa, 6,865 nautical miles. Leg 2. Cape Town to Auckland, New Zealand, 6,884 nautical miles. Leg 3. Auckland to Punta del Este, Uruguay, 6,000 nautical miles. Leg 4. Punta del Este to Charleston, South Carolina in the United States, 5,751 nautical miles. A map of the Around Alone course. The sailors. The first Around Alone Challenge race had lots of first-time racers. The rules allow any sailors to enter the race, as long as they can prove that they can sail 1,000 nautical miles by themselves. When the first race started, there were taxi drivers, newspaper editors, and an oil rig worker competing. Age is no barrier. The oldest sailor was a 56-year-old grandfather. The boats. Boats entering the race do not have to be exactly the same type, as they do in the Around the World Yacht Race, but they must be single-hulled and no more than 60 feet or 18 meters long. Hazards of sailing solo. To be a sailor in this lonely race takes skill and courage. Being the only person on the boat means that if you get hurt, you have to care for your own injuries. Most of the sailors sleep only 4 hours at night. A diagram of the qualities of a solo sailor. Boats can flip over in this race too, and it would be almost impossible for solo sailors to put a boat back upright by themselves. Many boats have flipped over at sea because of strong winds and high waves. During one Around Alone race, a sailor named Isabelle Autissier flipped her boat in the Southern Ocean. Another sailor in the race, Giovanni Soldini, sailed to her rescue. Then he went on to win the race. Ballooning. Not all Around the World races take place on the water. Some races are held in the air. On November 21st, 1783, the first people took to the sky in a balloon. The straw they burned to heat the balloon caught on fire. They were able to put out the flames with water carried on board for just such an emergency. The flight lasted 20 minutes and covered 5 miles, or 8 kilometers, at a height of 330 feet, or 101 meters. That balloon flight was the start of another challenge for people to race each other higher, further, and faster. It was also the start of the race to become the first to get around the Earth in a hot air balloon. The race. Many people have tried to be the first to travel around the world in a hot air balloon. In March 1999, Bertrand Piccard, on his third attempt, joined with Brian Jones to launch their balloon in the Swiss Alps. They climbed to a height of 21,000 feet, or 6,401 meters, in just over an hour. 19 days, 1 hour, and 49 minutes later, they passed the finishing line over North Africa, becoming the first balloonists to travel around the globe with a non-stop, non-refueled flight. They had traveled 26,600 miles, or 42,807 kilometers. The pilots. An American adventurer, Steve Fawcett, has tried to fly around the world in a hot air balloon 4 times. In January 1996, he set off alone from South Dakota in the United States. His balloon was named Solo Challenger. Balloon problems forced him to land 3 days later in Canada. The balloon was rebuilt. A year later, Fawcett took off from St. Louis and flew for more than 6 days before landing in India. He set new ballooning records for distance and time. In December 1997, Fawcett made a third attempt with a larger balloon, but he had to land because of bad weather. In January 1998, the Global Hilton team took off in a balloon from New Mexico in the United States. The crew members, Dick Rutan and Dave Melton, had to stop the flight 2 hours later when a helium cell in their balloon burst. The 2 men parachuted to safety. The The balloon was destroyed by a fire that was caused by the fuel in the basket catching light. A timeline of the around-the-world ballooning attempts. The balloons. A hot air balloon is built very carefully so that it will fly as far as possible. The balloon itself is called an envelope. It is made from very light material. Many people who have tried to fly around the world have built bigger and bigger envelopes to try and help them finish the flight. A burner is used to fill the envelope with hot air. Because hot air is lighter than the cooler surrounding air, the balloon rises. By heating the air in the envelope and not heating the surrounding air, the balloonist can control the balloon's altitude. A special gas called propane is used to keep the burner going. Hazards of hot air balloons. Like sailing, balloons also have many hazards. Some of these are similar to sailing, and some are different. The weather not only affects sailors, it can upset the flight of a balloon as well. Many of the balloons that have tried to fly around the world have had to stop because of bad weather. A balloon can get caught in strong winds and be carried a long way off course. A diagram of hazards of hot air balloons. Modern hot air balloons are very technical. Many of the people trying to fly around the world have had problems with their equipment and have been forced to land. Single-engine planes. Since their invention, planes have been the fastest way to get around the world. The pilots. In 1933, an American named Wiley Post became the first man to fly solo around the world. Wiley covered a distance of 15,596 miles, or 25,099 kilometers, in 7 days, 18 hours, and 49 minutes. He flew in a single-engine plane called the Winnie Mae. It had an automatic pilot that kept the plane flying when Wiley needed a rest. In 1964, Geraldine Mock became the first woman to fly alone around the world. Her single-engine plane was called the Spirit of Columbus. The planes. Pilots have tried to make other planes the first of their kind to travel around the world. In 1924, 8 American crewmen in 4 Douglas World cruisers set out from Seattle, Washington, to try to make the first around-the-world plane flight. 3 of the planes and their crews succeeded. They became the first to fly around the world. It took 175 days. The first nonstop flight around the world was made by a team of U.S. Air Force flyers in 1949. The plane took off from an Air Force base in Texas on February 26th and was refueled 4 times in the air by tanker planes. The plane landed on March 2nd after 94 hours and 1 minute, having flown 23,452 miles, or 37,741 kilometers. Hazards. Bad weather has caused many planes to crash as they have tried to fly around the world, just as it has stopped many people trying to sail or balloon around the world. Fog and snowstorms especially have affected the flight paths of planes. One of the 4 Douglas World cruisers crashed into a mountain on its attempt to make the world's first around-the-world plane trip. The pilots had problems flying the plane through thick fog. and they did not see the mountain ahead of them. Both pilots survived the crash. People racing around the world always face possible weather hazards. Even now, with good weather forecasting and communications, sudden changes of weather can force boats, planes, or balloons off course or damage equipment. Because of these hazards, around the world racing is always a great challenge.